Hey, Clemson family, 3:15 p.m. Thursday. That's when you want to tune in to see Clemson in the NCAA tournament. The Tigers will take on McNeese State. It's a 5-12 matchup. A lot of you who have done brackets for a long time know how those can end up going. However, let's take a little positivity too, maybe from Clark Kellogg, who thinks that Clemson will make the title game. We'll hope Kellogg's prediction isn't soggy. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme Alway podcast.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I don't see that happening, but I didn't see an Elite Eight run happening last year. So we'll find out Thursday afternoon.
Very good. You can catch us, by the way, at clemsonkickoff.com. But we really want you to comment. And the best place for people to see all your comments, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. And we'll try to get this posted tonight. It's a little late on Sunday, but what the heck? It'll also be there in the morning for you on Monday, and then pop that out to the major podcast services as well if you just like to listen on the go that way. We're on social media at Clemson Kickoff, the places that matter: Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. So let's get into this. You want to start with a little bit about the ACC, a win over SMU that was maybe a little narrower than it should have been, and then maybe, I don't know, a loss to Louisville that perhaps also was a little narrower than it should have been at the end there.
Yes, tough shooting in
Yep,
both games for Clemson. And,
for sure.
I know Dillon Hunter got hurt, and that shakes things up a little bit, shakes up the roster, shakes up the depth. There's not much depth now on this roster. And I just don't know how you can win a game with four really legitimate players. And that's kind of what Clemson's playing with now. They haven't gotten a whole lot of production out of anybody else on the roster the last few weeks. So, again, Dillon Hunter being out for the year, the rest of the year, whatever, if that's Thursday or whatever else happens beyond that, really hurts. But I also think that you've got to be able to shoot the ball better than they did. And Bill, I don't know about you, but they looked tight from the start of the SMU game. And it's like, oh my God, we can't make a mistake. And we're going to play like, and they played like that, right? And they didn't play like that last year in the NCAA tournament. Now they did against Boston College in the ACC tournament, so maybe
Yeah.
that's a good sign. But they looked tight the entire time until they were down 15 against Louisville. And admittedly, I turned the game off at that point because they're down 15 with what, three and a half,
Right.
almost 4 minutes left. I'm thinking there's no way they have a chance to come back and win this game. I turn it off, and then I see the score changing, and they almost pulled it off. But and probably would have if they weren't playing with ACC officials. We'll leave it at that. Um, but
Okay,
I
Rick
just
Barnes.
yes, you can't play tight, right? And I know that this is a one and done situation, but everybody's in a one and done situation now, right? So you can't go out there thinking like that or playing like that because you won't get out of the first round if you do. And they didn't do that last year in this tournament. And it looked like actually the start of the Louisville game, they weren't going to do that. But then they got up by 7 in the first half, and Louisville cut it and took the lead. And then they really looked bad to start the second half. So they've got to enjoy the moment and play more loose and free. Maybe they will starting Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, one of three guys to me has to step up really. And I will say, look, Clemson got away with Joe Girard having a very poor NCAA tournament run last year. They still did really, really well as a team. So this can be overcome, but you've got Chauncey Wiggins, who was kind of the starter at the outset of the season before Dillon Hunter really replaced him in that offensive or in the starting lineup, and it really did make a difference. And I've seen a lot of talk about his defensive play really mattered as well. Then you got Jake Eidbreeder, and then you've got the young Dell Jones, who is, avoiding a red shirt, playing really well on the grand scheme of things for long-term development curve. But you need to see something a little different once you get to NCAA tournament time. I mean, the bar is raised. The competition that you face is just that much higher. So we'll see how things match up. And another interesting matchup will be on the bench because you're going to have Brad Brownell going against a familiar face to the Clemson basketball program.
Yeah, a lot of people, including this guy, at one point would have wanted Will Wade to be the next Clemson coach. And, there was talk of that several years ago, right? Before Brad Brownell kind of turned this thing around the last, what, 3 of the last 4 years, 4 of the last 5 years, whatever this run has been.
Maybe the last 11 months.
Yeah, well, but I mean, they did go to the Sweet 16
Yeah,
with that other group as well.
true.
So, kind of before that Sweet 16 run, there were a lot of people who talked about Will Wade kind of being Clemson's next head coach, and I would not have had a problem with that. Now we all know what he got caught up in with the FBI and all those things, but he was a part of not a huge part. He was, a graduate assistant and those kinds of things, student manager at Clemson. But he was a part of a pretty good run for Oliver Purnell, although they'd never won an NCAA tournament game. But it is a familiar face. Bill, I knew I would have bet, I would have said 99% odds when Clemson lost Friday night and they didn't go to the championship game and you saw all the bracketology dropping them to a number 5 seed that they were going to play McNeese. I would have bet any money that anybody would have given me that they were going to be a 5, McNeese was going to be a 12, and they were going to play each other. The NCAA does this, right? I mean, that's what they do.
No,
Did
it's
you?
just analytics and
Well,
metrics.
no.
It's just the
Did you
numbers.
see the bracket? Look, if St. John's wins
Yeah,
and Louisville wins, Arkansas wins. Guess who plays each other in the second round?
right.
Rick Pitino, John Calipari.
Yep.
Those things don't just happen by chance or analytics. So I knew as soon as Clemson lost Friday night and you start seeing all the bracketology, some had moved them up to a 4, right? And that they were going to be a 5, and damned if McNeese wasn't going to be a 12 and they were going to play each other.
Yeah. What do you think has to happen then? What do you lean on? I mean, the front court play was really nice against Louisville, and
Right.
Chase Hunter did a nice job driving to the lane and getting some inside baskets. What do you do you just hope it was the building in Charlotte that the 3-point shooting was as atrocious as it was? Do you just kind of shake that off a little bit? Like how do you bounce back? And then, again, having to mix in someone, now you got a couple of days to think about, all right, which of those three are we going to ride the hardest in replacing Dillon Hunter? Um, Big task.
I would say 5 keys, right, to win the game. McNeese is not big.
Okay.
So Lakhin and Schieffelin have to dominate, right? I mean, you can't let their smaller guys push you around. You got to not turn the ball over. They've had so many turnovers the last couple of weeks, especially in Charlotte. Just careless, lazy, soft turnovers, not even like really forced turnovers. And they're going to try to turn you over. That's what they do. I mean, if you've watched Will Wade's teams play, they try to pressure the ball. Very similarly to what Oliver Purnell teams did. I don't know if they're all out 100% of the game in that diamond press, but they are going to use it. I think Chase Hunter's got to be way more aggressive at the start of the game. He's been filling out the game, and that's fine. That's being a great teammate. You're the best player on the team. You've got to show it. And I'd love to see him attack early, right? So what is that? That's 3. I think they've got to get, and you mentioned earlier, they've got to get something out of hybrid. Those 3 that you mentioned, Hybreeder, Wiggins, and Dale Jones. I feel way more comfortable with Dale Jones right now than I do the other 2. And I'm a big Wiggins fan, but he has been atrocious the last 2 weeks. And Hybreeder looks timid when he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, just he looks like he's scared. I don't want to say scared, but very timid, and not sure of himself. And then you mentioned the arena. Nobody really shot the ball well last week. Nobody. None of the teams really had great shooting in the Charlotte arena. So if that's what it is, you hope that's what it is. But they've got to hit deep shots. And if they do 4 of those things, I think they win the game. I really do. And then we see what happens. This is a team with a lot of veterans on the team. But now look, how many of those veterans were a part of what happened last year? I know we talk about last year, all the great run, and it was awesome to watch. But Victor Lakhin wasn't part of that. Jaden Zachary wasn't part of that. Dale Jones wasn't part of that. Hybreeder wasn't part of that. So it's really Chase Hunter, Ian Schieffelin, Chauncey Wiggins. Miles Foster wasn't part of it.
Right.
And do you even try anybody else? Do you try any of the, anybody else on the bench? I don't think you do. I think you're really going with what a 8-man rotation, if that. And you've got to get something out of Foster, Highbreeder, Wiggins, and or Dale Jones. Something positive. You can't win with 4 legitimate basketball players on the court and then just somebody who's out there taking up space. Now, I will say Chauncey Wiggins played pretty good defense the other night. He rebounded. But, I mean, do you have any confidence when him or Highbreeder gets a open 3 that they're going to make it? I don't right now. And I hate feeling like that way, but because I think Chauncey Wiggins has so much potential. He's probably the most talented or has the highest potential of anybody on the team. And he's just not hitting any shots or playing with any confidence right now.
Yeah. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but let's think a little bit about this draw, because I've heard good things, both from people wearing amber colored glasses, such as ourselves, but then also even a buddy of mine up in Big Ten country said, hey, you guys can handle Purdue in the second round. I think the problem may be Houston, number 1 seed would come up right after that. But what do you think of this draw overall? Because I've also seen some things where Houston doesn't get to the Final Four.
Well, I think the thing about Houston that people are, I think, maybe not as up on the team as they think they are, is they are still saying, oh, well, Houston's not a good 3-point shooting team. They're all about their defense. And this Houston team can really shoot the ball. This is Kelvin Sampson's best team. So that, since he's been at Houston anyway. So yeah, there's the thought that, and there's our buddy again joining us here on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, Sissy's here.
I got one right down there. So.
Yeah, so there's this thought that, oh, Houston's not an offensive team because of that's what they've been in the past. Well, that's not the case this year. So I think that Clemson's got to score better, right? Clemson had 2 terrible offensive games in Charlotte, on coming after a terrible offensive game against Virginia Tech in the senior day game. So they've had 3 straight games offensively where they've looked tight, and just like, again, you can't play like that. They look like they're playing not to lose, and you can't do that. So if you're going to beat Purdue and you're going to beat Houston, yeah, I think Clemson's defense can keep it in the game. But at some point, you got to make shots. And you can't wait until you're down 15 like they did against Louisville. Or you can't struggle to get through the game like they did against SMU. My gosh, that was like pulling teeth, that SMU game. So I think they can beat Purdue or Houston if they get the offense going again. But that also, again, that means those top 4 have to play really well, but you've got to get something out of a couple of those other 4 guys. Because, I mean, do you really think he's going to play anybody else on the bench? I mean, it's really those 8 guys now,
right?
Without Dillon Hunter. And I mean, and Miles Foster, did he even play the other night? I don't know.
I think I saw him in the box score, but it wasn't
maybe
big minutes.
I mean,
and who's the other guy? I'm blanking. Anyway.
But it feels like, I mean, right now it's the main 4 guys, and then Highbreeder, Wiggins, Dale Jones, and Foster. That's it. So you've got to get something out of those other guys if you're going to make a run. And Bill, depth is such a big key in a tournament like this, right? You can't just rely on 6 or 7 guys. You're going to run out of gas. And so, we'll see. Miles Foster, I mean, not even really his fault. Why did he even transfer to Clemson? He's barely played this year. So, I mean, what did that even accomplish? I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
That he transferred to Clemson and then hasn't gotten to play. And Brad Brownell even mentioned it after the senior day. He said, it's probably my fault that I haven't gotten him enough minutes. But you've got to find a way to build depth, right? I mean, Asa Thomas hadn't played. What's he played? 20 minutes all year? I mean, you got to find a way to get those younger guys some minutes.
Yeah.
In case there's injuries. And now look at you're not going to play Thomas now. right? Not in the NCAA tournament. So
Come on down.
yeah, so I mean, I'm I think they're going to have a hard time winning a game in this tournament because I just don't trust them offensively right now, unless there's just this sudden elixir of the NCAA tournament and all that stuff kicks back in from last year for, Chase Hunter and Ian Schieffelin and Chauncey Wiggins played really well in the tournament last year.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can do that again.
A couple things I'd like to see. I mean, aside from change in venue, right? The building hopefully will be a little more friendly in and of itself. One thing, they held Louisville scoreless for like a 4 minute stretch. Unfortunately, there was also coincided with a 6.5 minute stretch that began before and ended
Right.
after that stretch. Clemson played good defense in that stretch, and they couldn't feed off of it. They couldn't turn it into playing loose at the other end. They couldn't build any energy out of it and put points on the board. That's something I would really like to see. And then again, that experience needs to come through, but you've got to have some way to just key on that defense, turning your energy level up and then letting yourself play loose at the other end, play instinctively at the other end, and feed off of your defense. The other thing, I'll go to Ted Lasso, which I know is a reference you're not on top of. Uh, be a goldfish. Shortest memory in the world. Forget about the shooting that happened in Charlotte. Again, and the way to do that is just play instinctively, play loose, play the brand of ball that you know at the offensive end, also at the defensive end, and let your successes. What do we talk about so much with Dabo Sweeney's phrase of complementary football? Well, play some complementary basketball. Let that energy feed you and sustain you and lift you above, and then hopefully the experience level comes up. So we will keep you posted on things as they unfold. I'm glad we were able to do this tonight. We weren't sure if we would. Go back and check out our preseason preview. We talk about a few other things in depth. That, of course, was before the Dillon Hunter injury, but you can hear a little. There was more than just an ACC preview. We did cover a lot of things that Clemson basketball has been dealing with late in the regular season and just the overall success that this team has had. So we'll also come back at you with football news as it warrants and come back and look a little bit of baseball. They won 2 out of 3 against Notre Dame this weekend. A little disappointing they couldn't get the sweep, but as that season continues on, we will keep revisiting all the good work that Eric Bakich's team is doing. So until our next episode, be sure to comment here, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, at Clemson Kickoff. We'll see you next time. I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.